One of the most popular teams in New York State is the Syracuse men's basketball team, who, we're still trying to figure out who this team is, but I think we're getting a better understanding in the recent days. 5-game winning streak for the Orange, game winner against Clemson just 48 hours ago. And to add some context here, we bring on Mike Waters of the Syracuse Post-Standard, covers this team, has so for some time, does a terrific job. Mike, thanks for joining us here in Albany.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Hey,
how's the weather?
I'll tell you what, man. It is an absurd winter wonderland out here. I wanted to say this before we went to last break. Folks, if you are on the road, take your time. I saw several accidents coming in here. It is a wild scene out there, so just take your time getting to wherever it is you are going. But Mike, Chris and I were talking before we went to break here and just trying to figure out who this Syracuse team is. We saw some eyesore losses earlier in the season, the St. John's and a host of others being beat by double digits against teams that, typically, on face value, Syracuse shouldn't struggle with. But the times they are a-changing, and then they continue to change as they've kind of changed the narrative here in recent weeks, a 5-game winning streak. How do you quantify this season thus far?
I have no idea. This team is so schizophrenic. Early in the season, when you're not just losing to St. John's, you're losing by 33 at home to St. John's, and it's a bad St. John's team. And to lose the way they did at Boston College, giving up 96 points, the defense was awful. The energy and enthusiasm was lackluster, and it looked like chemistry was a little off. The pieces just weren't fitting. And I think that's the one thing that happened here. And it took a little while. Jim Boeheim made some changes, but it took a couple weeks for them to really take hold. And, of course, they also had to get through a couple teams that, no matter how they played, it's going to be tough to win at North Carolina and Notre Dame. But the changes Jim made I think he decided to go, no matter what, at point guard with John Gillen. He stopped playing John Gillen and Frank Howard in sort of a point guard platoon. Frank Howard had started the year at the point as the starter. That ended at about the Boston College game on January 1st. The other thing he did is he gave up the idea that Andrew White could play the 2 for him. That was the lineup that had his most experienced front line on the court. It meant that Andrew White had to play the 2. It was Dajuan Coleman at center, Tyler Roberson at forward, and Tyler Lydon at the 3. Andrew White's a 3. He's really not a guard, at least not the type of guard that can play this system. So moving Andrew White to the 3, I think, really made him a lot more comfortable, both offensively and defensively. And the other thing that did was it moved Tyler Lydon to either the 4 or the 5. So really, I think Jim Boeheim came into the season, and there were so many new parts. And some of the players he didn't really know that well because John Gillen and Andrew White are both fifth-year seniors. They're grad transfers. It's not like Syracuse had been scouting either one of them for the last 2 years in high school and even had that kind of a feel of what kind of player they were going to be. So I just think it was a team that was going to take some time to come together, and once Jim Boeheim settled in on what he thought was best, they still needed another week or two to kind of let that gel, and you're seeing the results now.
Mike, anytime a coach or even an athlete for that matter are nearing their end in their profession, so I guess we'll stick to the coaching side of things since we're talking about Boeheim, but we see some of maybe the passion or the ability to adjust evaporate a little bit, but the way this season started, I thought, well, maybe things just aren't going to end well for Boeheim at Syracuse. But he, from everything you're telling us here, has found a way to adjust mid-season and find the right spots for different guys. I mean, are you ever kind of, take a moment and look at Jim Boeheim's career and think to myself, boy, even after all these years, he is still on top of his game?
I think about that every once in a while. Sometimes it takes somebody outside to ask me about it, but I'm kind of bewildered by the question because I almost take Jim Boeheim's passion for the game for granted. And I kind of forget we are talking about a 72-year-old man, but sometimes I'll see like the guys who he played with back in the early 60s, and they're old. And Jim's not. I don't know why. Maybe it's because he just refuses to leave the college campus, and he's around all these college kids all the time, and he's got kids of his own that are high school age, and it keeps him passionate about the game, keeps him young. I don't know, but no, I haven't seen him lose one iota or 1 ounce of passion for the game. He still gets after the officials, still gets on his players, still takes a jab or two at us guys in the media when he feels like. And just in terms of coaching, the tinkering that he did with this year's team, I think he's on his 4th or 5th different lineup. He hardly ever does that, and usually when he does, it portends a really bad season, or sometimes it's due to injuries. If you see a Syracuse team with 4 or 5 different starting lineups over the course of the season, the lineup changes that he's had this year really haven't been based on injuries that much. He was tinkering. He was trying to find the right combination. I think he's finally settled in on one that he thinks is the best for the team, and he's kind of let that group kind of gel together here over the last 3-4 weeks. And, of course, it's the last 2 weeks. We're winning 5 in a row. And this team still has issues, mind you. They've won 5 in a row, and that's to their credit, but they're still not a great defensive team. They still don't rebound the ball particularly well. They've gotten a lot better on offense. They shoot free throws incredibly well. I just think right now what's happened is the guys he's going with, their roles are clearly defined, and that's given them a comfort level to win these games.
Mike Waters from the Syracuse Post-Standard joining us here on Big Board Sports. Mike, in the next minute, could you describe to our listeners what is the ceiling of the Syracuse team this season?
I don't think the ceiling's that high. I might have said the same thing last year at the same time, and they wound up in the Final Four. But last year's team, you got to remember, had 2 fifth-year senior guards with a lot of experience in the program, and Mike Benajay and Trevor Cooney, and they really rode those guys as the season, hit the postseason. This year's ceiling, I don't know. They're going to make the tournament when 3 weeks ago no one thought they would. They've notched a couple top 10 wins, so I think they can take the floor against anybody and have a chance. So I don't know. I tell you what, we did talk about this, myself and some of my colleagues at the paper on our way back from Clemson. They're like, when this team does make the NCAA tournament, and I think they will, no one's going to want to play them.
Mike Waters, Syracuse Post-Standard, has done a tremendous job for a long time now, and we appreciate you taking out a couple minutes for us here in Albany, and we will definitely reach back out as we go into the conference tournament.
I look forward to that. Good talking to you.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, take care. That's Mike Waters from Syracuse Post-Standard doing a great job talking Syracuse men's basketball this morning.